Of course. Got a failure on the exterior lighting.
Look at you, DraftKings, acting like
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
the Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
What's happening, man? How are you?
Everything's groovy as could be. I'm happy to be in Austin. I love it here, you know.
It's a fun place.
Yeah. I mean, I stay here, so.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. And I don't know. It's like it's just a special place in this country.
Yeah, I agree. It's perfect because it's like a blue city and a red state. It's like even the really kooky liberal people are pretty reasonable in comparison to like the kooky liberal people from California or New York.
Yeah,
It's balanced.
kooky liberals. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that lately.
Did you get a lot of that after Saturday Night Live? A lot of kooky liberals coming your way?
Yeah, it's a good transition.
That monologue was great, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I got a lot of blowback, as I
Yeah.
knew I would. You know, because
Because you told the truth.
well, yeah, it's just that you don't want to say anything negative about vaccines, which I didn't. What I was talking about in that monologue was was really about profiteering.
Yeah.
Okay, so World War II, necessary. Everyone could say that was a necessary war. Let's say this war on microbes was a necessary war, right? Why is anyone profiteering?
Yes.
Why did Pfizer get to make $100 billion in 2021?
Right.
Anyway,
Why did the government profit off of it?
the profiteering of war is just wrong. Like, okay, if you say that it has to be, there's conflicts happening right now I disagree with, but I'm wondering, why are people making money off of it? You know, even if you think you have a legitimate vantage point from the other side of it, why does someone get to make so much freaking money off of it?
Yeah. It's the dirtiest aspect of human beings. Would find a way to profiteer off everything. Everything and anything, even if it's just, and they'll prolong just things in order to make more profit.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you know that, Richard Nixon knew it was imperative that the war continue. The Vietnam War, back before he got elected. He didn't want that to get settled.
Yeah.
And there's a great phone call. I don't know if you've listened to any of Johnson's phone calls. Lyndon Johnson.
What phone call?
There's a phone call he had with Nixon, saying, "Hey man, you're going against the peace," because he was trying to get a peace to go before the '68 election, right? Which he eventually just bailed out of anyway, because he could see he was going to lose it. Johnson. I don't. Maybe you haven't.
No, I've never heard that conversation between Nixon and
It's an incredible conversation. Nixon's like, "Oh, I wouldn't do that. I would never," And of course, he was doing that. He was subverting the peace process, in the same way that, they wanted to make sure Carter didn't get those, those guys released in Iran.
Yeah. I always wondered about the Vietnam War, how much of it was about heroin. 3 days before 1968 presidential election, President Johnson contacted Senate Majority Leader Everett M. Dirksen to inform him the White House had received hard evidence from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The campaign of Republican presidential candidate Richard M. Dick Nixon was interfering with Johnson's effort to start peace talks to end the Vietnam War. In this call, Johnson referred to contacts between Nixon's campaign and South Vietnamese President Nguyen Van Thieu, I don't know how to say his name, urged that they thwart any such negotiations.
Yeah, and that did happen. And also, they definitely, Bush, the senior Bush, George Bush Sr., he met with the leaders of the Iranian, what do you call it, party, whatever, before the election to Carter, the fight.
Let's switch guests here. Ian Carroll. Reporting that GameStop.
Dude, very nice to meet you. Yeah, good to be here, man. So, let's take, first of all, why do we love conspiracy so much? Because I fucking love them.
Dude.
I love them. I love finding out the dirty little tactics and secrets and how the government does things and what the fuck's really going on. Why is it so exciting?
I think it's something like deep down in humanity. Is like we love storytelling.
Yeah.
And these days conspiracy theories are like I mean 10 years ago conspiracy theories were fringe and they were problematic.
Tell me about it.
Right?
I was a conspiracy theorist way
You're
back
the
in the
hard-
day when you were a fucking nut.
Dude, you're a conspiracy theorist when I was not even here yet.
I was arguing with people about the moon landing on
Right?
the radio before the fucking before there was any podcasts.
I mean, maybe there's some of the mystery element, but the thing is that so many of them are, it's a knowledge. It's a thirst for knowledge, because some of them are total bullshit. But
Yes.
some of them are clearly, there's something there.
Clear,
Right?
Yeah.
And realistically, if you had, like, the journalists of integrity from 1960s era alive today, and they hadn't been bought out and shot in the head and whatever else happened,
Dude, I
they
think
would
even
be
in the
conspiracy
60s,
theories.
They were compromised.
Well, they were
The
getting
big
bought
one-
out.
The big one is Woodward with the Watergate story.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see Bill Murray when I had Bill Murray in here the
I
other
haven't
day?
watched it yet, no.
Bob Woodward wrote Wired, which is about John Belushi. Bill Murray read 5 pages of it, and he said, "Holy shit, they framed Nixon." He said the Bob Woodward story about Belushi was so full of shit. It was so exaggerated and fake and just filled with nonsense. He's like, John Belushi was a lightweight. He goes, John Belushi would drink 3 beers and he'd be drunk. He goes, he was probably the first speedball he ever took, and he died from it. Like, this whole thing about him being this raving, drug-fueled maniac was totally fabricated.
It's a good example of how the mainstream narrative had Nixon as a crook.
Yeah.
And he's just one of many examples, right? And when you
Yes.
really start to look into it, you realize, I mean, probably not the greatest guy, but what was the real story there? What were
Right.
they framing? Why were they trying to get him out?
Yeah, no, this is not a defense of Nixon.
Yeah,
Nixon
exactly.
was not a great guy. But Tucker thinks that Nixon knew too much about the JFK assassination and wanted to talk about it. And he started saying, I know who killed JFK.
Yeah.
And he started yapping, and they were like, let's get this motherfucker out of here. And also, one of the terms that he had agreed to run for president was Gerald Ford, who was on the fucking Warren Commission.
Bingo.
Gerald Ford as his
Yep.
VP.
Yep.
So Gerald Ford becomes the first ever non-elected president. He slips in, he becomes president for kind of a bullshit term,
Yeah.
And-
Does a whole bunch of war party
Yeah.
things and just a whole bunch of bullshit.
and we decide that Nixon was the real problem with the country.
I mean, how often is it that they're allowing someone that they aren't sure about to get to president, and they're sticking them with a VP that is their guy, right?
Oh,
like
yeah, Dick Cheney.
LBJ with JFK,
Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney,
Everybody
Mike
was the
Pence,
hidden
like-
secret that, well, Pence was
I don't know what the hell to think about Mike
Pence
Pence.
is
I
like a
have no
preacher.
idea.
I think he was good to get the
Just
religious
super
people.
rhino, super yeah.
Weird guy.
Yeah. But
Odd
I mean,
guy.
Trump is a weird guy too. Like, who knows what's going on with Trump right now?
He's an animal.
Yeah. it's-
He's the most fun ever.
I love Trump conspiracy theories because people get so riled up and it's so partisan and political, but within it there's all this like juicy like meat for thinking about. It's like not even conspiracy theories, it's just like
Right.
his history.
Right.
And especially with the Epstein stuff now and his history with Epstein, it just gets me so interested in you'll never know the real story.
Here's the
But-
thing about theories and stuff. There's so many things that are so weird that you would think, wait a minute, well, this can't be real. This is fake.
Yep.
And then it's connected to real life events in some sort of a way that you would think there's a conspiracy. Like, here's one of my favorites is Little Baron Trump's.
Yeah, dude, I
Like
just
the
got the
fucking
book.
book?
It just came in the mail.
Insane.
Have you read it?
No.
Dude, I'm gonna read it. I just got it.
I should buy it. I should buy the book before it gets
I
bought
got
out.
it in a 3-part series that has the Barron Trump one, and then the last president, and there's one other one.
And then how about the Werner von Braun one about a guy named Elon that takes us to Mars? Werner von
I haven't read that one
Braun,
yet.
the fucking Nazi who ran, Operation Paperclip and became the head of NASA. That
Super occultist kind of stuff in
writes
there.
a
Like,
novel about a guy named Elon that takes us to Mars. And even Elon saw that. And he's like, "Is this real?" Like you would think. There's no way.
simultaneous to us kind of getting like some version of UAP disclosure that implies time travel.
Yeah.
Which is like, Lord knows what that is. But
Right.
it's just so fun to speculate because it's
Right.
like, how would we know?
Yeah, how would we know? And the whole UAP thing, boy, you want to find a cauldron of bullshit.
Yeah.
That's the cauldron. Do you know
Oh,
who's
yeah.
got the best take on it? Is Jacques Vallée. I am in the
I've not
middle
seen a
of
lot of his stuff.
my 3rd book of his right now, and it's, I'll tell you what it's called.
I
He's
should
got
read
a-
some.
He's the best.
Why do you say he's the best? Like, what's your
Because
qualifier there?
I'm on this one, Confrontations, which is one of a 3-part series of human interactions that have been documented with some sort of an invader from some other dimension or planet or whatever the fuck it is. is the most rational. He's the most analytical. He's the least likely to buy into horseshit, but not dismissive.
That's
of
like the
strange
critical
sense.
balance, right?
Yes, he's the guy that they modeled the French scientist in Close Encounters of the Third Kind after. So he's been in this game since the 60s, investigating these things.
And time in the game counts for a ton. It counts for much, and that's my greatest weakness in a lot of ways, among several, is that I'm just really new to the game, and so I'm constantly like catching up on shit, and as stuff breaks,
Right.
Like Pam Bondi, for example, I have no history on who Pam Bondi is because I wasn't paying attention when Pam Bondi was in Florida, and so I'm having to like play catch up on what was going on.
Right.
And the people that have been here for forever, like the Alex Joneses of this world, the Jacques Vallées, the people that like watch things break live, you just get a different level of context. And then you get like the David Ikes that are like, it's fucking reptiles, dude. They're all reptiles. David, have you seen David Icke coming after me on Twitter recently?
He came after me
Dude, it's
too
so
because
good. I love him.
make fun of the reptile thing. It's like, why won't you have me on?
I genuinely really appreciate it. It's like a good time. But it's
he's-
like maybe there are
I think
reptiles. I don't know,
He
man.
went too far in a time where there was no internet.
Yeah.
You know, he went too
It's,
far.
you get too certain of yourself, right? You think you have the answers and you just keep going.
A little bit of a grift. With some of these folks. I'm not saying necessarily him, but it's a little bit of a grift.
Yeah. Well, it's an easy temptation to fall into, especially on the internet. Like every single day, people in my position, I mean, people in your position too, like we have the ability to just like, I'm going to get views and money if I drop deep grift. But a lot of them are not, like a lot of them, when you look into them, you realize, oh, there's like literally nothing there.
There's a bunch of stuff that's clickbait horseshit, for sure.
Or at least there's probably nothing there.
Yeah. I've been trying to wrap my mind around the idea of quantum computing. It's exciting, but complex and difficult to understand. What I do know is that quantum computers can process exponential. Quantum computers also put a strain on the world of digital privacy and cybersecurity. They may one day crack encryption algorithms to be current.
Got about 70 miles to go.
That's why ExpressVPN upgraded their encryption to use MLKEM, the strongest available protection.
Taking that 90 straight in.
All your online activities rerouted using encrypted servers, even though
It's always nice to see closed on the way station signs. Not that it matters. My shit's on point.
none of these third parties will be able to read data or hijack your connection.
11.5, 34, 33.5. Total 79.
expressvpn.com/Rogan. And now listeners can get 4 extra months for free. That's expressvpn.com/Rogan. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can get your 4 free months by scanning the QR code on screen or by clicking the link in the description.
The one that I just recently kind of reminded of is, you know, the story that Disney sent kids to Epstein Island.
Yeah,
That's like
I
a
did hear
perfect,
that.
like,
It's
oh,
not-
such a money conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It's not true.
That's not true.
It's when you look it up, you realize that I mean, a lot of the information is kind of gone. It's hard to even tell if it's legitimate websites and information, which is already a red flag. But the ones that are still up, they just sent them into like the ocean. Like they were going on cruises that happened to be in the vicinity of the island. That's
Right.
totally different.
Which is
than
a
sending
very
kids to
popular
the island.
vacation destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it becomes this like, and that's kind of I think that's the fun part of the game,
We thought about buying the island.
dude.
The island was for sale. We talked about it for a second.
Area restriction on my amount of data, or if it's location dependent.
Well, they did. The initial examination of the body was in Dallas, and then they flew it to Bethesda.
Yeah.
The thing about that is, and this is a part of David Lifton's book, Best Evidence,
Probably
which
location.
made me become a conspiracy theorist.
I've never read it.
It's fucking great. And David Lifton, who's an accountant, they gave him, I forget what the project was, but it was something to do with the Warren Commission report. So this guy's like a serious bookworm. He read the entire Warren Commission, which fucking nobody does, and it's like 9,000 pages.
Superpower.
Yeah.
Being able to read like that.
Exactly, and find contradictions over and over and over again. He's like, this is horseshit. This whole thing's horseshit. And then he found out that Kennedy's brain was missing when it got all the way to Bethesda. He found out that the Dallas doctors said that the neck wound was an entry wound, and then the ones at Bethesda turned it into a tracheotomy hole. It was a bullet hole. He got shot. You could see him go like
Garbage
that.
all over the place. And you can also see his face get blown off. And they published photos of him from the official autopsy where his face was visible.
I have a theory, and this is just mine.
Yeah, I'm really
I'm
curious
sure
to
I'm
hear
not
yours.
the only one. I think he got shot in the head at the same time from two different directions.
That's a good theory, honestly.
Because there's a bit of spray that goes forward, which is not like, things are weird when you hit them with bullets. Like, people have shot people in the head and the bullets come out their eye.
Yeah,
like it ricochets
around
into
the
like
back
a
of the
22
skull.
or something like
Yep.
that. But weird things happen when you shoot things, but some things are super consistent. And one thing that's super consistent is when you hit something, it goes in the direction that you hit it, right? So back and to the left. Hicks used to talk about that all the time. Back and to the left, when making fun of the fact that the Zapruder film clearly show that it wasn't a shot from the back. But the head goes spray too. It goes spray like this back and to the left. Can we see it? Let's see it real quick.
Yeah, something I love about the JFK story is that there are so many deep experts that have really done the dig, and they don't all come to the same conclusions.
Here's the thing about Lifton's book. He also documents how many witnesses were murdered. And it's astounding.
That's the
All
part
these
that makes
witnesses,
it stuff
their
too.
cars got parked on railroad tracks, and they died of heart attacks when they were 30, and they got fucking shot in a robbery, and they committed suicide, they gassed, they fell asleep in their car.
Man, Hillary Clinton sure got started early.
Yeah. Back into the left. Watch this. Watch this, the explosion.
Yeah, 'cause he's already hitting the neck. You're totally right. It's like
See?
cloud, in
Right?
front, right?
I mean, it could be that the top of his head exploded right there, and the force drives him back. It also could, there's another possibility, and the possibility is spontaneous nerve reaction of your body shutting down.
Yeah.
Which could cause you to go back into the left, even if you get shot in the front.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the spray, or if you get shot in the back, rather, the spray looks like it's going forward. Like, we'll watch when it gets hit. See that?
Yep. It's just weird.
But that could be. But the thing is, there's not a bullet hole on the other side. So that could be just the opening of the head, and it's an explosion of blood that comes out. Also, you have to realize he's probably bleeding internally already. He got shot in the neck. So he gets shot here. There's probably blood spraying all over the place inside his head. And then, boom, he gets shot in the front of his head. But his head clearly goes back into the left. Like, almost instantaneously. And in a way that you would imagine if someone got hit like that. Watch this again. Boom,
Oh,
he gets
good
hit,
catch on that frame.
and then back.
And it's all gone. Like his face is just clearly open right there.
Gone. Right.
And it's clearly not a shot from behind. I mean, like,
It's definitely not a shot from behind because there's no entry wound in the back of his head. And if you're saying that thing hit the front of his head or the side of his head from behind like that,
I feel like if there was a conspiracy theorist training course, the JFK assassination would be like the perfect like dry run training course to like build it around, because you have all the pieces. You have a complex conspiracy with unknown actors from intelligence agencies, organized crime, and maybe multiple governments. It's like, and we don't know all that. Then you have a complex cover-up that evolved over time. You have like researchers. You have bad information being fed in from outside. You have conspiracy theorists that are taking it in directions that are like corroborable.
Right.
It's got all the things that you need to both learn how to dig into and learn how to watch out for. It's a lot of fun.
and also people didn't really get serious about it until about 12 years after the assassination. So when Geraldo Rivera has Dick Gregory on the show, what's this?
Whoa. Have you guys ever heard the theory that frames were taken out of the Zapruder film
Yeah,
to make it
that
look like
one's
the car never
crazy.
slowed down?
That's crazy.
That's bizarre. The thing is, I don't know how to trust things like AI reconstructions of videos.
Let's just trust it, bro. It's fine. Boom! Oh my goodness,
Dude,
that
poor
is
Jackie,
so
man.
crazy.
So,
Oh my god, that's so crazy.
the theory about the driver shooting him, that's the one I've never bought, honestly.
No, that's
People always say the
that's-
driver turned around and shot him. It's
I
like,
think
no.
that's one of those theories that probably the government created.
Yeah.
It's one of those
There's
theories
an
to
open
make
piece of
people look
evidence.
stupid.
There's an open piece of evidence of some kids that showed up covered in mud at a car shop that we worked at. It was like a dry day. They showed up covered in mud, and there's a certain guy that theorized that they were hiding in a manhole and shot up at him out of the manhole, and that the car slows down in real life, and that witnesses saw the car slow down, and that there's drop frames from the Zapruder film, and it's like these are these kind of theories where it's like how do you dig into that and like prove that? And the answer is you have to get to primary sources. You have to get to like, is there a police report for that kid showing up? Like, is that location real? Like, can you corroborate any of this?
Right.
And the unfortunate truth is you could if you could fucking see the files that our government was hiding from us.
Right.
Theoretically, anyways.
They're supposed to be released soon. Yeah. Have some
Dude,
patience.
they're releasing tomorrow, Joe.
Can you? Is that real?
No.
It's like every day's Christmas.
Yeah, for real.
Can you Google David Lifton witnesses of the JFK assassination odds? Because he did some sort of a calculation of the odds of all these people dying the way they died.
Yeah, dude.
And it's millions to one.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Like,
That's
so
a big
I
part of
think-
what I do. Is it, how likely is it that this is a coincidence? Is it even possible?
Right.
Right?
That one's very unlikely, which means they were killing witnesses. Someone was killing witnesses. I think there was people shooting from the back and the front. I think Lee Harvey Oswald, people want to say it's 1 or 0. I think Lee Harvey Oswald was in on it. I think Lee Harvey Oswald probably didn't shoot the president, though. But he might have. He might have hit him in the back, because there was a shot in the back, too. You know, the whole reason why they had to call this a tracheotomy is the same reason why they had to come up with a single bullet theory.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you're
You gotta explain it. Well,
you know,
I'm not. I'm
you
as
know about
deep
the
as-
ricochet underneath the
Yeah,
overpass?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like I'm deep enough to know the basics, but there's so many layers, and you have to read the books, you have to watch the films, you have to like
You gotta talk
see
to
the
Oliver
interviews.
Stone.
Exactly.
Oliver Stone just goes off.
And that's why I was curious to hear your takes, because you've actually talked to these people.
Oliver Stone's the best, because he's been studying this for fucking ever. He can tell you exactly what's going on with Dulles.
And he's not just been studying it forever, he's
Yeah.
been studying the actual primary source documents themselves, and like reading the real archives that are released.
And then there's a wild connection between Jolly West and Jack Ruby.
Oh yeah, Jolly West is crazy. Have you read Chaos yet?
Yeah,
Dude. So
Yeah,
I
I've
didn't know
told
about
Neil
Jolly
about
until I read Chaos. And then I started to dig in it because I knew about MK Ultra. I have been learning about MK Ultra when I was a kid, like doing psychedelics. But I didn't really understand anything about that history or anything around the CIA back then.
They ran the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic.
Oh, yeah.
And they closed it down after Chaos came out.
No way?
Yes way.
So just recently, huh?
The entire time they had been running this clinic. It's not like they were running the clinic and they said, you know what, let's not run the clinic anymore. Let's just give it to regular
70s
doctors.
are over, like
It's over.
whatever.
The peace and war bullshit or peace and love bullshit, that's over.
Yeah, one of the
That's
conspiracy
like-
theories that's
Yes,
yeah,
it's coming out this week.
Really? This
yes.
week?
Tom O'Neill
Finally.
is my friend Greg's longtime friend and former neighbor. Well, I think they're still neighbors, but they were neighbors in New York, and then they were neighbors in California. This guy,
cool neighbor.
very cool neighbor. But this guy's been working on this one fucking story
Yeah.
for 20 years. You imagine just
I don't
like
understand
pulling your
people like
hair
that.
out, just going crazy for 20 years.
No, I'm a generalist, and I rely on people like that because I could never stay
Right.
with something for that long.
No, he could have written many other books
Oh, yeah.
on the exact same subject. He
Oh,
can
yeah.
keep going. Like part 2 more I know, part 3 more I
You could have
know.
written a book about each of those sketchy dudes that he had questions about. Like
Right.
each of those CIA guys, each of those weird doctors.
Well, each
There's
of those
whole
times,
rabbit
how
holes.
about each time that Manson got away with like committing
Oh,
crimes?
yeah. And the
they
girls, too.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, it's above our pay grade.
Yeah.
So they were paying people to do this. They were giving the Manson family LSD and money. They were allowing them to commit crimes. And the whole idea was just to change the idea of what people thought of as hippies and
Well-
to stop the anti-war movement. and also to see what they can get away with, they can do with
I
this
suspect
acid.
I mean, to me, the big question is that seems like the first, like for sure that's going on, right?
Yeah.
Is to co-opt the hippie. I mean, first the hippie movement probably was to co-opt the anti-war movement that was pretty buttoned up. Like,
Yes.
I suspect that LSD did not just escape the lab. I suspect they were like, quick, turn all these kids into crazy hippies. Like, try this out, try this out, try this out.
Really?
Yeah, so,
Why do you
so
think
check this
that?
out. Have you read Strange Scenes Inside Laurel Canyon?
I started to read it. I have not finished it.
It's so, I mean, even just the
But it's
first chapter, right?
nuts.
So if you take that book's premise, it's basically that before the hippie movement, there was a very powerful organized anti-war movement led by a bunch of Quakers, a bunch of black activists, a bunch of, like, my dad was one of them. And it was not this hippie fringe thing. It was a very powerful anti-Vietnam protest. And the moment that LSD gets introduced, it becomes all peace and love. And he points out in that book how all of these, like Frank Zappa, like lead members of the Doors, people organizing the Monterey Pop Festival, over and over and over. Like, he probably has 2 to 3 dozen examples specifically he goes deep into. They all just happen to move from wherever they are all over the world into this area in LA that is not a hotbed for music, and they all just start making music about peace and love and doing LSD. And all of them have parents that are from special forces, intelligence operations, Pentagon. Like, some of the musicians themselves have backgrounds that look exactly like CIA operatives that were doing like revolutions in Cuba and
Coup in
overseas.
specific.
Like the lead singer of the Doors, Jim Morrison, for
Yeah.
example, Frank Zappa. So Frank Zappa's one where his dad and his mom were both. Frank Zappa's dad worked at the base that was like the chemical weapons, like where they did their chemical weapons research. His dad was a chemical weapons specialist and with like top secret clearances, which is basically like, when you read about what his dad was, it sounds a lot like what MK Ultra would be. It sounds a lot like what you would like drug experiments. And
Chemical weapons is drug
well,
experiments? It's not.
chemical is the wrong word. Psychological operations. But it's right there, like it's on his Wikipedia page. It's not hard to find these things. What that guy did, I forget who wrote the book, but what he did was not like find uncovered evidence that had never been uncovered. He just looked at all these different people whose histories were very public, but he put it all together and realized, like, that's a lot of people that all moved to this one place and all started producing music that was like all within this one thing. Like Jim Morrison, his dad was the lead commander of the boat that was in the Gulf of Tonkin that started the Vietnam War. That's like kind of a weird coincidence.
Yeah.
And you could definitely make the explanation that kids often rebel against their parents, right? Kids often step out of line and are like fuck the old way.
Right.
But a lot of them were ex-military, like directly ex-suits and ex-CIA.
Well, was Morrison an ex-military
No,
guy?
Morrison, I don't believe he was.
Why do you think that he looks like a CIA operative then?
No, not Morrison. I was saying Frank Zappa. It's
But you said lead singer of the Doors too.
No, that was just me giving examples. The guy specifically that he said that had the history that was he was doing what looked like color revolutions in Cuba. Because I'm not super familiar with the music of that time, I might forget what band he was in. It might have been the Mamas and the Papas. There was a
Okay.
couple of guys in the Mamas and Papas that he did deep dives in.
But here's the question: you can't like fake talent. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
you
a lot of them
can't-
didn't write their own songs.
Yeah, but
And I mean, like,
Jim
fake
Morrison
talent, like, look
was
at Diddy, bro.
fucking good.
Oh, no, Jim, yeah, some of them
Jim
were great.
Morrison was
Some of
fucking
them were great. And
Frank Zappa was great.
Crazy great.
But this is the
100%.
thing: it's like you can't like.
100%.
I don't think. But here's the thing: they could push people with talent. They also could use to further their agenda
Yeah.
and make those people more popular than they would be organically.
Yeah.
And put a lot of emphasis behind it. The reason why this tracks is because what Nixon did. So with the sweeping psychedelic act of 1970, they passed this. They made mushrooms and all these different things illegal so that they could go after the civil rights activists and the anti-war activists. And the
They
Black
just shut them all
Panthers.
down.
They've shut them all down. Go after them for having these things that were societal disruptors.
It also makes fertile ground for COINTELPRO. When you have things like drugs and drug
Yeah.
culture, like fertile ground for COINTELPRO.
Well, this is the big thing about Jolly West and Manson, is that Jolly West allegedly taught Manson how to use psychedelics and manipulate people. And oftentimes when Manson was with the family, apparently, he pretended to take LSD. And they all took it. and then he would
And then he did like
manipulate them.
hypnotism and like weird speeches and
Yes.
like it really doesn't look like. And the thing is that I respect Tom O'Neill so much because he didn't try to claim things he couldn't prove,
Right.
But he just put it all out there and it's like, this is what I'm seeing, and think what you think. And it looks to me like you're saying that Manson was directly trained to practice these things and carry them out, or he was sort of like a patsy in the operation that they kind of like gave him the setting within which to just go along his megalomaniacal impulses and just kind of kept tabs on him and kept him safe and just kept him going. I think he was a part of it.
I think
because of how effective he was.
They
Like,
visited him in prison.
oh yeah,
This is why I think he's a part of it. I think they've recognized in prison, like, look, you got two choices. You could be in jail for the rest of your fucking life, or we can work for you. We think you're brilliant. And we think you're an amazing mind of untapped talent. And, you know, you pray this narcissist ego, and you start telling him things, and the next thing you know, he's out there in the street working for you like a little hoe.
It's crazy how many people that wind up in these weird positions came out of like, you were in prison, then you got released, or you were in trouble, and then you got. And the girls, it's crazy. Those girls, like, some of them committed some minor crimes, but a lot of them are just regular people. And then suddenly they become like absolute, like, murderers, like dark murders. Those were gross.
Well, I think mind control is real, right?
100%.
And I think hypnosis is real, acid is real, and then the techniques that they've developed over decades of fucking with people with these drugs, they know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, the dark thing we don't need to go into it because it's real dark, but I think that when you study the MK Ultra files, and this is where there's a lot of conspiracy theories that are hard to prove, there's a bunch of witness victim testimony, but it's hard to prove, is the Monarch programs are an alleged program that never got disclosed, and that's all the programs that are hidden behind child sexual abuse being a part of mind control, because a lot of the drugs, like, they can break people's minds, they can be involved in mind control, but a lot of those papers talk about dissociative identity disorder as like the holy grail of that Manchurian candidate concept, and it makes a lot of sense if you know how dissociative identity disorder works.
Right.
And that is most commonly associated with dark, grim childhood sexual abuse. And then you get all these victim testimonies, hundreds and hundreds of people these days talking about how they were a part of these programs, like people that were on Epstein's Island that claim to have been victimized as children and subjected to mind control experiments paired with childhood sexual abuse.
It's just so hard to believe that people are that evil, but they have been throughout history. It's it's weird. It's like we'll look back on the Victorian era, or we'll look back on the man-boy love of the Socrates era. We'll go, that's just back then.
We've evolved now.
We
We're
don't do that
cultured.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when they've identified specific aspects of traumatic past that they can use these particular victims of trauma, of childhood trauma, and take them and turn them into weapons. That's so wild.
Yeah,
but that is an asset, right? If you got someone who's so fucking crazy, you can talk to them and get them to do things, and give them acid and get them to Sirhan levels, or whatever the fuck they did to Jack Ruby.
UFC 313 is back in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean,
You get people to do things
break Jack Ruby's mind in an instant, like.
in jail. Yeah.
And the craziest thing is that we've been living in a world where for all of our history until the internet, and really until recent internet history, they could do those things and just not have anyone report on it.
Exactly.
And so no one would ever even know. And I think that there's this feeling that the world is so dark right now because we're learning everything.
Exactly.
And I actually take the opposite view. I think that the light is being shown, and the world is super dark. There's all kinds of crazy, horrible people, but there's all kinds of crazy good people, everything in between.
Yeah.
And you have to shine the light on it all before you can fix it.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think that's one of the more fascinating things about the fact that this is a weird time for uncovering federal corruption, right?
Yeah.
And I think they're in real trouble because I don't think they can use their phones. I don't think they can do the things that they used to be able to do.
That's a good point.
And I don't think they're
I hadn't
united.
thought about that.
This is what I
They're
think.
definitely not united.
Right.
Well,
So-
100%.
There's rats in that ship.
Oh, yeah.
There's rats in that ship. And I think everybody's scared, and so everybody's worried that people wearing camera buttons and so
It is the era of secret cameras, too.
and they're all selfish fucks, so they're all
Yeah.
for themselves. So they probably demonstrated that all throughout these relationships they've had with other people. So nobody trusts anybody.
Yep. I mean, that's the
And-
nature of politics.
And you can't use your phone.
Nope.
You can't use your email. You can't. You probably can't even talk with Alexa in the house.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm at the point where I'm starting to get, like, I'm not literally that paranoid, but I've had some conversations in terms of, like, people that want the story, which I normally just avoid because I don't want to touch it. But every now and then I'm like, let's go on a walk because I don't want to hear what you have to say around any of this shit because I
Exactly.
know it's being recorded. I know it can be
100%.
listened
Do you
to.
have a crazy phone or you use your
No, it's just an iPhone. Yeah, I'm aspiring to get one of those, like, one of the Eric Prince phones or something like that.
That's
but,
when
like,
you've reached the next level
Yeah.
of conspiracy. When you get
Yeah.
a de-Googled phone
And I
that
don't-
doesn't have 5G, you'll use 4.
Yeah, but the way I look at it is, so I intentionally do all of my stuff. I basically do open source investigations. I don't try to, like, break news stories,
Right.
Because it's way safer and it's way more interesting. And my goal is not to know everything or be some great journalist. My goal is to inspire everybody else, like to inspire the world to think a little more and to be more critical and to look it up for yourself.
Well, you're also serving a function, like a service for people, because what you're doing is you're taking all the time to find
Yeah.
all this open source and then putting it out there.
Yeah.
And you're really thorough about it. You say, this is what I know.
I try
this
to
is
be.
what, yeah.
Yeah.
You've also
Maybe I get wrong
You
all the
start
time,
doing
but-
this thing with your hand above your head. People steal that now.
Yeah, like
you notice that?
Well, it's because
Well,
TikTok's
it's
green
your
screen.
hand. The way you do it.
One
the
finger gets
hand.
taken away. TikTok will delete one finger if I'm pointing with one finger
Why?
because it's a green screen app, and so I'm like using the camera, and it's got in my camera, it's putting the thing behind me, but it's cutting out me. And if I only use one finger, it cuts my whole hand away. So I started doing this. So
Why is it?
just because the green screen, when it's like trying to AI analyze what is a body and what is the background, it'll take away my hand as though it's the background.
Oh, how weird. So you started pointing.
I haven't gone all the way to doing this at the screen yet, but
Yeah, I see a lot of people that are doing exactly your way, so that's why they're doing
I mean,
it.
to be fair, I've had a level of success that is unprecedented, and people call me a controlled opposition because of it. And it's like fair, like it's like whatever, dude. Like if I was in all of their seats, I would probably be like, where did this dude come from? But at a certain point, it's like an intense level of.
You're
like,
talking to
suspicion.
Captain Controlled Opposition over here.
I know,
People
dude.
think that I'm Controlled Opposition.
Yeah,
And so that whole term is funny because there's got to be real controlled opposition. That's why it's a term. Because it's a
war, dude.
Yeah, well, it's
crazy out here.
a valid strategy.
Yep.
But I think you can figure it out after a while.
Yeah, and for me, it's really interesting because, and you know this too, you've been in this game for forever, is when you actually get to meet people in real life, you learn things about them, you get that vibe of them.
Yeah.
That it's not impenetrable, you can be fooled.
Yeah.
But like, how much can you fool? And can you fool all your employees all the time? Like Alex
Right.
Jones is a great example. People call him controlled opposite, like he's bought by the Jews, he's bought by the communists, he's bought by the, and it's like, cool, but I know all of his staff, and I've hung out with them, and like, you've known him over years and years, like, is he faking his entire life? Like, I've been on his show, I've
Bro,
seen what
he
prep
was
they do,
doing the
like,
exact same thing when no one was listening.
exactly,
He was on public radio.
yeah.
Alex has been saying, he's been talking about this stuff since the 90s, and I've known him since 90. I guess I met him in 99.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned the other day that he started InfoWars, like he officially founded InfoWars, like when I was 2 years old, or
That's
something like that.
amazing.
It blew
Groups of masked men who dressed in military uniforms with military issue shoes. They all had the same shit on. And they all ran around in this peaceful protest for the World Trade Organization and started smashing things and lighting things on fire and creating chaos, which allowed the police to then move in. Then these people all holed up in one house. They negotiated with the police and they were all released.
Weird.
Yeah, so
Almost
this
sounds
is
like
the
a
90s.
few events of the last couple years, you know?
Yeah, well,
Funny
it
how
sounds
that
like
works.
Patriot Front, which just went under. They went under the day after. Right after Cash Patel gets in.
Okay.
Cash Patel got
Let's go.
Hold that up.
Saw that
Uniform.
clip. I saw
One
that
guy's
clip.
got a fucking drum. Get
Yeah.
the fuck out of here. These are feds.
Yeah.
These are feds. The day after Cash Patel gets in, they disband.
Funny how that. I mean, that's a. I'm really interested in like looking for like right now with all these new people coming in, Cash and Pam and all like politics, RFK. I'm really enjoying the process of just trying to watch their actions and trying to figure out who's doing what and how much are they going to play to the money and play to the people. And it's just such a fascinating exercise in journalism of where do you kind of and how much leeway do you give them, how much grace do you give them. Especially with the Epstein blackmail hanging as a cloud over the entire federal government. I don't think that any of those three are blackmailed, but I don't feel confident that I know that they're not.
Let's look at it. So here's a possibility other than blackmail. Negotiation.
Well, that's always a factor.
But instead of blackmail, if you are a government information on someone who's an asset or someone who's very wealthy, and this person is like, hey, motherfucker, like, what are you doing? You're at 26 times?
Yeah.
How about you shut the fuck up from here out?
Yeah.
No more Trump's Hitler.
Well, that's the
Cut it
definition of
out.
blackmail.
How about you say that we did a good job every now and again?
Yeah.
Give us a little credit.
Yeah.
Let's work something out here. It's not necessarily blackmail as much as it's negotiation.
I would argue
Blackmail
that's
wants-
indistinguishable.
Right. Unless you're getting money too. Like, you know, I know.
No, blackmail is just I know
Right,
something
right.
that you don't want out. And
Right.
and any level of threatening that it'll get out, or you know,
Okay, but what if it goes the other way? What if the wealthy person contacts them and says, listen, I can make things very good for you. I can do this, I can do that. If I go to jail, this does not help anybody.
100%. Yeah, reverse. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. That's
I
the opposite.
think
That's bribery, I guess?
kind of. It's just
Kind
yeah,
of.
that's deal making. But
Right.
I think that a lot of Epstein's targets were. I think that a lot of them, because I think that we're talking, it's not just Jeffrey Epstein, it's organized crime as a network.
Mhm.
Like, he's just an employee of organized crime.
Right.
And I think that a lot of those people are basically saying, yeah, I want into the club. Because if you are like a Reid Hoffman, or allegedly, if you're one of those guys and you want more contracts or you want more
Allegedly.
deals, like allegedly, and like let's be clear, just because I say something on Joe's podcast does not mean that Joe fucking agrees with me. CNN, thank you. Because like I'm a crazy fucker, and I got all kinds of theories about Epstein. But like I think that a lot of them were willing, because I think a lot of them are. I mean, if you're sick enough to rape a child, like on Jeffrey Epstein's island, you're sick enough to want into that club.
Well, for sure, throughout history, there have been pedophiles.
Oh.
That's a fact. For sure, some pedophiles get to prominent positions of power. That's a fact, right?
And the
Jimmy
traits that,
Savile.
the traits that do the same, like
Jimmy Savile in
Exactly.
fucking England, like that
Yeah.
way. And that should put it out to bed for anybody.
Prince Andrew,
Oh,
Bill
Sandusky.
Gates, allegedly.
I don't know about him. I never heard that. But the Sandusky I've heard.
You never heard about Bill Gates?
I didn't know he was into kids.
Oh, dude. I mean, he's one of Epstein's closest confidants. And
Here's the thing about the Epstein thing. Were they all underage? Were some
no,
of them?
not at all. No, it's very
Right.
complex.
Right.
And
So some of them were in their 20s. Like one girl was
Absolutely.
complaining, or I shouldn't say complaining. That's
Yeah.
very mild. One girl who alleging that she was 20 at the time. She was saying.
Yeah.
So just because someone has been to the island and it's been compromised, right, doesn't
just 'cause they've been to the
necessarily
island?
mean that they've been compromised with underage people. But I think there's a specific group that wants underage people.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say this is not a conspiracy thing. It has been that way throughout history. There
All
are
of history.
many, many, many conspiracies that have been uncovered, and criminal investigations have found that people were trafficking children. It's been done. So this is not like vampires.
No.
We're not talking about werewolves.
Child trafficking rings get exposed and brought down around the world relatively frequently, like at least once a year, but they
So-
usually don't make big news because they're usually not like Epstein.
We know there are pedophiles. That's a real
Yeah.
thing. We know there are psychos who get very wealthy and
Yeah.
want specific things. But there's people that drink rhino horn tea.
Exactly.
Right? Why do they drink rhino horn tea? Because the rhino is so endangered. It's so gangster to have
Just the
rhino
elite
horn
experience.
Exactly.
You
The
want
elite
and
experience.
what you're talking about is such an important concept. Is that some people, like, if you wanted to pay for an underage prostitute, you can pay for that. There are women that would be prostitutes underage. The people that we're talking about in the Epstein files that wanted underage girls, specifically because they weren't all underage. Some of them wanted overage girls. Some of them were just scientists. They weren't all compromised. But the ones that wanted underage girls, they specifically want what they couldn't have. Because if you wanted sex that you're allowed to have, you just wanted a young girl, you could just go pay for that. What Epstein was doing is he was recruiting girls that were from like American families and kind of tricking them and coercing them. Like they wanted a girl they wanted the experience of coercing. Some of these people, not all of them, want the experience of I am doing this to a girl that I am coercing, I am manipulating, or I'm just straight up being physically violent to get this thing. Because if you wanted a willing 16-year-old, those do exist.
But the thing about these really wealthy, high-profile people, and, Eric Weinstein was highlighting this to me once. He was saying,
Smart dude. I like
very
him.
smart dude.
Yeah.
And he wasn't making any accusations at all, but he was just talking overall. He goes, I think there are people out there that can facilitate experiences
Exactly.
for discrete clients, and that
Oh, yeah.
it is very valuable. Like, look at the guy who gave Epstein that house in Manhattan. He gave him
You mean
guy
Leslie
from-
Wexner?
Yeah, the guy from Victoria's
Oh,
Secret.
dude.
He gave him a $60 million mansion.
He did way more than that. He
You're
signed
so
his entire
cool.
power of attorney to him.
You're so cool. I'm going to give you a house.
No, he gave him the keys to the entire castle
Right.
of all of Victoria's Secret and Abercrombie and Fitch and all of L Brands.
When you find out that people who worked at Nickelodeon are pedophiles,
Yeah.
you go, oh, well,
Foot
if-
fetishist, no less.
Right. If you're going to be a pedophile, wouldn't you go be around kids? Like, if you could be and sneak around? Okay, wouldn't you think that here, Sacha Baron Cohen thought he had exposed pedophile ring while filming Who's America? Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
Concierge stuff. They can
They could do
point that,
something.
they can help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, things happen out at like it's
That's
kind of
right.
crazy. Do you remember Andrew Breitbart got killed?
I do remember.
And
that.
he
But
was
he had
exposing
a heart attack.
exactly. He
right?
was exposing Acorn because oh man, I'm totally blanking on our boy these days that does all the
O'Keefe?
Yeah,
James
O'Keefe.
O'Keefe, yeah.
You know that James O'Keefe got his start with Breitbart on that story exposing Acorn, and what they did is they sent James O'Keefe and this other female reporter into Acorn,
And
which
O'Keefe
is this,
pretended to be a pimp.
they asked them for help setting up a underage sex trafficking ring, and the people at Acorn.
I didn't know it was underage.
Yeah, that was they wanted help setting up an underage sex trafficking ring using children from Guatemala or from Central America. I
Did
think.
they say that in the meeting?
It's on. That was what was on tape.
What?
Yeah, it blew my mind when I read it. I was like, what are we talking about right now? Because I didn't know that history because I wasn't paying attention back then. And that is the story, is that he went in and asked for help setting up I don't think he was probably using the words like 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds. I assume that he was like implying like 16-year-olds, but I don't know. But that's the story.
How did he phrase it?
I don't know. It's not, I can't find those videos anymore. I've looked.
Really?
I'm sure they're somewhere, and I'm sure that James O'Keefe could tell the story.
Well,
He tried to say, yeah, you do it. We'll help you. And that's what the case they brought against Acorn was. Andrew Breitbart mysteriously died, and then the coroner that did his autopsy mysteriously died. It's like that was such a weird one to stumble upon, because I didn't know I was about to stumble upon it. And people could look. I mean, everyone should look up anything that I say. Always, people should always just look it up and just start typing things in that I'm saying and see if you can figure out what you think. Because I am not an expert. I'm just a dude that is looking things up, and I try to be really thorough. But
was it Breitbart or Drudge that was the first victim of these coordinated anti-advertising campaigns?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by that. Where advertisers all pull out to try to tank you, like what they tried to do to Elon?
Exactly.
I don't know.
They do it strategically.
I think it was done to both, probably, but I don't know.
but I think the first one that they did it on, I think it was Breitbart. I think Breitbart was on this like super rapid upward trajectory, and they just completely tanked the revenue. Was it Breitbart or was it? Do you remember, Jamie? Who was talking to us about that the other day? Was it Chase Hughes? Who was it? It might have been.
It is interesting how you can watch out over history. The more history you learn, the more you get to see where certain strategies, like kind of like deep state strategies, so to speak, or intelligence agency strategies, get invented, and then they start using it. Like
Might have been Mike Benz. Might have been.
That would be a Mike Benz thing to say
Yeah,
for sure.
it
Yeah,
sounds like
I can
Mike
see
Benz.
that. He knows his shit. Yeah, he knows a lot of shit.
Okay, Breitbart lost
Yeah.
90% of its advertisers in 2 months. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Who's still there? So this is the Washington Post making it seem like this is a normal thing.
Yeah.
Oh look, they lost other
Media
advertisers.
frame
People
jobs.
pulled out because they're full of shit.
It's just another frame game.
No, they all coordinated to try to boycott them and kill them.
It's so crazy to have all of these tactics exposed in plain view now, and they still keep trying them. Did you see the thing that's going around today of the 22 different mainstream news sites all parroting the exact same
Yes.
thing? And
Well, not just that, all the Congress people.
yeah.
Did you see that? They're all saying the exact same thing.
I guess it's Congress people, not
Yes.
news anchors. It's just that now everyone is a.
It's fucking Pelosi and Schumer and all these different people. There's 12 of them now that they've got saying the exact same script.
Oh, it's more than 12. Alex Jones had a full 22 on his show, so they kept adding to it. At first, it was 2 of them. Early in
They're
the
so
morning,
dumb. They
and then
all
it was
read
12,
the
and then it
same
was-
script. They're so dumb.
But they use a different tone of voice.
Well, they give their own
It's
spin on it
wild.
because they're performers.
It's wild.
I've got to have my own creative control.
Yeah. But then you get into the people that are like, the whole world's a stage, trust the plan, Q's in control, and it's like, whoa, dude, calm down.
Yeah, you've gone too far. Well, then when you see that
Yeah.
documentary on Q, you realize what kind of people you're dealing with.
Which documentary?
Did you see
the
Into
ones
the
that have the
Storm?
really cool like
HBO
Q
one?
thing. Yeah, but I don't like trust a documentary like that either, because like HBO is like that's the definition of mainstream media. So I try to stay somewhere in the middle of that. Of
That
like,
is true, but I think
Right?
HBO let this guy uncover this story accurately.
I believe it.
I had him in.
I'm pretty sure that I saw. I'm pretty sure that I did see the documentary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a multi-part, and it shows all the people that were involved in it, and it kind of highlights a guy
Yeah.
who seems to be Q, who is like kind of an internet
Yeah.
shit poster, fucking around, and
Yeah.
when 4chan was in its heyday, back when all that shit was going down, like it's ripe for that kind of nonsense.
Oh yeah, perfect fertile ground for that kind of controlled reverse opposition, whatever bullshit psyops. And that's where, for me, the bottom line is, can I corroborate it with primary sources? And Q is the definition of no. Of course I can.
Right.
It's like, what is it? A time traveler that's coming back that's telling us how to save the world or something? I don't understand.
Do you think stuff like Pizzagate, like when they had that guy come in and
I already
fire
know
off
where you're
that
going,
shot, I felt like that was a great way to put a halt to all the looking into the pedestrian
Exactly what
emails.
that was.
Because then all of a sudden it's a kook thing. Now it's a crazy person and a dangerous person because he's got a gun. You're causing dangerous people to take their guns.
Just like with the vaccines, it's like they always have to make it dangerous, right?
Yeah.
It's dangerous to say that this might have side effects, right?
Because
And
if
in
you read
case-
those emails,
exactly right.
those emails are bananas.
They're not explained.
They're talking about young kids who are going to be coming to a party to have fun. They're talking
They'll be in
about
the
pizza
pool.
and
They
hot
will be there
dogs.
for sure. $65,000 worth of hot dogs flown from Chicago for a
There's-
White House party.
The whole thing is like very weird.
Did you ever see the archived Instagram post from James Alefantis' Instagram?
No.
Because that's a dark place. So that there's so many layers to Pizzagate that they tried to cover up intentionally for a very good reason.
Well, how about the logos?
Well, the thing is, I avoid, and the way I've talked about it, I've avoided all the symbols and logos and even some of the pizza stuff because I think there's so much more ripe, clear evidence that is
Okay.
way more powerful. And James Alefantis' Instagram account is a great example where
Can you find it online?
so you cannot find it on Instagram anymore. It's only been archived onto other sites, which is kind of sketchy because it's like, how do I know you're not adding photos and stuff? So you kind of have to dig and cross-reference over and over and over to make sure that you're getting sort of like the consensus, because everyone watched as it happened. So
Right.
people like Liz Crokin, people like Alex Jones, like they saw these things come out, and you can find plenty of different archives of all of James Alefantis' Instagram posts. And there are things like photos of children with their arms taped to tables, and the
I have
caption
this.
is "looks like a fun time." And then people that have always been commenting on his posts, like the people that are interacting with his posts all the time, have even weirder Instagrams where it's like kill room and there's a coffin that's open and things like that. There's like a photo of like a walk-in freezer and it's like, man, looks like you've been having a fun weekend. Things like that are just super dark. And a bunch of babies and a bunch of symbolism, a bunch of children. And it's all photos on their Instagram in plain daylight. And then it all got scrubbed, obviously. Jesus and that's not to mention Podesta's art collection and the Marina Abramovich connections. It goes on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the Clintons with the Haiti scandals, with the cocaine in Arkansas. It's like, the thing is that we sound crazy. I sound crazy to someone that doesn't do their own research because you just start, there's so many layers of like crazy shit that's happened with some of these people.
Yeah.
That if you don't know the history of a person like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, it's really easy to think, oh, that's just so insane that you would think that they'd be involved in it. And first of all, they frame it in the articles about Pizzagate. They say, Hillary Clinton was the mastermind of a global pedophile sex trafficking ring, all headquartered in this pizza shop, which is not what anyone ever claimed.
Right. So as soon as you can discredit that, you discredit the whole thing.
Classic frame job, which Nancy Pelosi explains very well, where you make a false claim, you say that's what they're saying, and then you discredit the false claim. But if you really learn the history of the Clinton family, just as one example,
Did you ever read The Strange Death of Vince Foster?
No. But I know a little bit about the Foster situation and a couple of those weird deaths earlier on.
I read that book.
I should read that.
Back in the day, and that's what got me into wondering about the Clintons. Because that guy died, they found his body where there was less blood at the scene that was missing from his body.
I was actually just reading about that specific murder in Whitney Webb's books like 2 nights ago, because she goes over that too, because it's a huge question mark.
The gun was in his hand. The gun's never in your hand.
And his family claimed that that wasn't the right gun. He had a black gun, and his family was like, no, he owned a silver gun. All these weird things. They never found the bullet. Like, all sorts of things that just don't add up. And that was right after Epstein had first walked into Bill Clinton's life. That was between White House visit number 1 and White House visit number 2. Well, Epstein was funding the refurbishing of the entire West Wing of the White House.
I'm glad you brought up Epstein, because there was a point that I was going to make earlier that I forgot. The Epstein situation is identical to the Manson situation.
You think so?
Yeah.
Explain what you mean.
This is why.
I mean, I think you don't mean that literally. I think you mean that in a more
I mean
metaphorical way,
the
right?
structure. The structure of how you would pull, like if you were going to use an intelligence asset to do something evil, to do something where you can get dirt on people or compromise people or accomplish an objective, you would get someone who's already fucked up.
Oh, 100%.
And then you get that fucked up person and you help them, run this cult, or you help them get girls.
But you intentionally keep them separate.
Yeah.
You're not hiring them. They don't work for you.
Right.
They're a private entity.
If he
It's like
wasn't,
layers of obfuscation.
like if he wasn't personally a pervert, it wouldn't work.
Oh, not a chance.
Like think about, like the guy gets arrested for having sex with underage girls or getting them to do happy endings or wherever he did. So he gets arrested, and then the real weird thing is that he just gets out and gets like house arrest.
Yep.
And he gets like a little slap on the wrist, and then he's back in action with all these rich people again.
Yep.
Like really rich, influential people. Like Bill Gates is hanging out with him after he's already been arrested and convicted. Like that's bananas.
But to your point about
But
them,
he's got to already be fucked up. He can't be
100%.
like a straight edge, regular guy with a family and children that is just evil. No, you got to have him in on the thing. So if you got a guy you know is already a freak, you know he's already a nut, and he's already like doing
that's how you recruit them.
blow and fucking hookers all the time, and maybe he's been caught with a few underage girls.
Well, when you study where he came from and how he got plucked from the Dalton School and then got put into Bear Stearns and then got put through Bear Stearns and then got put into money management.
It was teaching at one point in time.
He was teaching at the Dalton School, and then he was a banker at Bear Stearns, which he conveniently left when this big scandal broke that implicated him and the director, Goldstein, that had hired him and had been helping him up. And then he left and kind of took the fall and took the dirt with him. And then he went into the arms running businesses, which is where he met Maxwell, Daddy Maxwell, not daughter Maxwell, and Anand Khashoggi, and Lease, and all these other arms traffickers. And that's where he got into those. So it's like you walk slowly into these worlds, and as they're doing that, I'm imagining they're taking tabs on him, like, what kind of guy is this and what's he into? And he's working with arms traffickers. And some of those arms traffickers were famous for blackmail. Adnan Khashoggi, he was famous for having his yacht filled up with cameras and giving his arms deals everything they could ever want while he's selling weapons to them, and he's got his whole yacht wired up with cameras. Trump later bought that yacht, which is super interesting.
Whoa.
Do you know about that? So Trump, check this out. And I'm not claiming that Trump is in on everything. It's a very complex thing here, but Trump's history is pretty weird. He bought the Plaza Hotel, which is where the Blue Suite parties that blackmailed J. Edgar Hoover happened. You remember? Do you know about those?
No.
So year was that? Oh, dude. So J. Edgar Hoover, the founder of the FBI. This is where I thought I was starting this fucking job to talk about GameStop and to talk about like the financial markets and shit. And then I realized how important intelligence agencies and organized crime are to how the world works. And I just got deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into like,
I don't want
what's
to miss
the
out on
history?
some of the Epstein stuff.
Oh, we
Should
got
we come back to that?
Well, we'll get there. This is all connected.
Okay.
I could talk about the Epstein stuff for fucking days and start all kinds of trouble for your podcasts and shit. But,
Well, I think
But-
that trouble's supposed to be coming out publicly.
I don't think it's gonna.
Wasn't there the
It's not gonna
FBI
come
New
out.
York guy had to step down, right?
Yeah.
They were saying they're withholding files.
Yeah,
So the Pam Bondi's office said that they just got thousands of files.
allegedly. Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
I've been saying that I'm like Charlie Brown with Lucy in the football.
Yeah.
You know, when she pulls the football away, every time he thinks he's going to get to kick it, and he goes falling on his ass. That's how
Like
it feels.
you haven't read Whitney Webb's books, have you?
No.
You really should.
I've watched a lot of her stuff online, though.
So the thing about her stuff online is that she comes off as way more unhinged because now she's very smart. She's very smart. She's on it,
Clear.
but she's now very concerned, rightly so, about the sort of technocratic nature of what might be to come. But her research on Jeffrey Epstein is looking backwards at the history of organized crime, the history of Epstein, and it paints a very, like, we know very well who he worked for, and we know who he was associated with. She has primary sources, pages of sources cited about who put him where, who he interacted with, who said what about him, who claimed what about his life, and it's like, it's two full books, and it's very well sourced, with primary sources cited all the way throughout. And so it's like, we don't actually really need the Epstein files to know what was going on. They'll hopefully include a lot of new details,
But don't we need it for rock solid proof? Like, don't we need the
So take Leslie Wexner that we were
Flight
talking about
logs.
earlier. No, we already have the flight logs.
do we have all of them?
Unredacted. All of
Really?
them, yeah.
All of them. So,
Well,
here we go.
theoretically, the ones we know of.
And do we have flight logs with destinations?
Yeah.
So we
Oh,
know.
yeah.
So we know who went to the island.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're all there. You can read them online on archive.org, as well as other places. But Leslie Wexner is a great example here. Leslie Wexner owns Victoria's Secret and L Brands, right? He's the bank that bankrolled Jeffrey Epstein. And I was saying earlier that he signed the power of attorney over to Jeffrey Epstein so that Jeffrey Epstein was able to sell his assets, manage his assets, buy on his behalf. He could sell Victoria's Secret without Leslie Wexner in the room or even his knowledge if he wanted to, because that's the level of power of attorney that he signed over to Jeffrey Epstein when he was his money manager. And the reason why you do that is so that you can claim that you don't know about his operation. He was just my money manager. I didn't know he was running this thing because I wasn't involved in any of those transactions. But what that meant is that Leslie Wexner damn well knew. There's a whole, we could go into the mega group and we could go into his connections to Charles Bronfman and all these other things.
But I was saying about the Victoria's Secrets. If you're a pedophile and you want to work with kids, like Nickelodeon, if you're a freak, what do you do? You get in the
That's how they
underwear
were
business.
recruiting. Is they were recruiting from the Victoria's Secret modeling, and
Right.
Jeffrey Epstein was claiming that he was a rep. But do you know about the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch that went down for running a sex trafficking ring?
Yeah.
He was Leslie Wexner's guy. When Leslie Wexner, he bought Abercrombie and Fitch in like 1990, maybe 91, 89. And then one of the first things he did was he put that dude into position as CEO. That was Leslie Wexner's dude. And he becomes the CEO, and he's gay, and he likes really hot young male models. And he started running a male sex trafficking ring out of Abercrombie and Fitch. So Leslie Wexner, this dude who is a self-proclaimed possessed by a demon.
What?
Yeah. Whitney has a whole chapter where she goes into this article that was done by a mainstream news source like 10, 20 years ago, where they're interviewing Leslie Wexner and asking him about how he came to power and what's his secret. It's called his D-Book, D-Y-B-U-K, and you can read about this on Wikipedia as well. And he describes in his own words that he's possessed by a D-Book, which is like a Yiddish word for an evil demon that drives him for more and more and more and more. Is in his own words.
Is this Is he being hyperbolic? Is
A
he
little
joking
bit.
around? Like,
No.
oh, I'm possessed by a demon that just wants more and more. I just want to be successful.
No, I mean, I wasn't in the room, but I assume based upon the wording and how it's put, I assume it's like, yeah, it's like
I want to read that.
it's like a billionaire. I mean, it's in the text. It's directly quoted in the text in One Nation Under Blackmail, actually, which is in that backpack.
One Nation Under Blackmail.
One Nation Under
Is that
Blackmail.
what
That's what I highly recommend, but it's super dense. It's a hard read. I've read it 3 times now, and I still am taking notes and trying to look things up to understand it because she's just so researched. And it's things like this, where she's gone back to the original article where they were interviewing him, and he's just like a CEO. So they're just asking him, "What's your secret to success?" And he's like, "I'm possessed by I have a drive for more." And he chose the word "dibuk," which is a Yiddish word.
This is from New York Magazine interview.
That's exactly the source.
He says, and now perhaps it's time to reintroduce Leslie Wexner's D-Book, the demon that always wakes up in the morning with Wexner and tweaks and pulls at him. When he was a boy, his father called it pummel, a churning. So he feels molten and unformed, pricked by these spiritual pins and needles. He met this demon again when he was 40 and already worth $500 million. When he climbed the mountain in front of the house in Vale and almost froze to death and decided to change his life. This demon he calls terminal Schwilskis, which makes him wander from house to house, repeating the pattern of his childhood on a luxurious scale, wanting more, swallowing companies larger than his own. It is precisely the reason that Wexner has $1 billion and doesn't stop at say $5 million and a new Mercedes every other year, and what he calls normal life. Bridge on Wednesdays and bar mitzvahs on Saturdays, and the Winding Hollow Country Club in Columbus, which is like Buckingham Palace to him when he was 15.
Yeah. So that's just to point out that he's a fucking weird dude. He's a sketchy dude. He's running 2 sex trafficking rings out of his companies that he doesn't know anything about. And simultaneously, he founded, the Wexner Foundations and the Leslie Wexner Heritage Foundation. Those are also very interesting and controversial. They're very tied to Israel because he is one of the foremost Israeli philanthropists, despite being an American. But he founded what was called the Mega Group, which is essentially it was not disclosed for a long time. It was secret. And it is a group of Jewish billionaires that get together on behalf of global Judaism, which is not uncommon, and there's nothing wrong with that if they're not committing crimes. But they would get together and meet, and people like Leslie Wexner, Charles Bronfman, the list is, we could look it up. And that group, it is unclear if we have proof that they were conducting espionage, but there are all of them have ties to organized crime through various elements. Like the Bronfmans were rum runners, as one example, that were then involved in the mob. Leslie Wexner's involved in these trafficking rings, etc. And that group seems to have been directly associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And she's one that she shows all the primary sources and lays it all out. This is what we know, and this is where the source came from, and this is what it said, and these are possible explanations for it. Here's 1 or 2 or 3 explanations for what it might be, but we don't really know because this is as far as the evidence goes. And so Leslie Wexner is just one where there's all this swirling evidence all around him that in order for him to not be aware of what's going on and to not have been an active part of this is damn near unbelievable in my eyes, allegedly.
That's well covered. You did a good job of covering your bases there.
yeah, which I've learned to do because I started on TikTok where you can't even say certain words or you'll get taken off of TikTok. So,
right.
Yeah.
Which is also fast.
Yeah, but the files getting released, I am not expecting them to come out in any complete form because the mainstream understanding is that Jeffrey Epstein was the guy. Jeffrey Epstein was just an employee of these organized crime rings that work on behalf of the CIA and Israeli Mossad and British intelligence and the whole, because organized crime is the black markets, the dark things, the sex, the drugs, the rock and roll, the child trafficking. And intelligence agencies were designed to be legitimate governments' point of access to organized crime. Theoretically, intelligence agencies were supposed to be, Truman wanted the intelligence agencies to be a newspaper about what's going on in the world for the president to know, right? But Allen Dulles was not about that. Allen Dulles, founder of the CIA, was like, I want to do covert operations. And very immediately, covert operations were like overthrowing the government of Guatemala, Iran, buying the elections in Italy. They bought the elections in Italy by just passing giant bags of cash to the mafia, so they would just go buy the election right after World War II, because they needed to not let Italy fall to the communists. It's where the Vatican is. So the CIA, though Truman okayed it, hoping that it would be a newspaper, the CIA has been covert operations from the start. And covert operations is all about public-private partnerships so that you can't have it traced back to you, right? Because if you get caught doing MK Ultra shit, the government's fucked, right?
Right.
And so what they want to do is they want to outsource MK Ultra shit or child trafficking shit or drug running shit to that shell company that's hiring that guy that works at that organized crime, right?
The same way USA does it with NGOs.
Bingo. And that is all. So that's what the deep state is. The deep state is the conglomerate of organized crime and intelligence agencies that work in the shadows as well as the halls of power, but they're not supposed to exist. We're not supposed to know about them. But they've always existed because before we even founded the CIA during World War II, there was this bombing of this ship in a port on the eastern seaboard. The USS Liberty is confusing my memory right now. It was called Operation Underworld, is what there's a Wikipedia page about Operation Underworld, and there's a whole bunch more about it. Is the ship blows up in the harbor, and they were building this big new ship. Would have been in the early 40s, I believe. It was during World War II, with like inside World War II. The ship was blown up, and and it's not clear if it was German U-boats. There are reports that later Meyer Lansky and the mob took credit for it, like low-key, but we don't really know for sure who blew it up. But when it blew up, the U.S. government got really worried that they had no way to secure the ports along the eastern seaboard because all the ports were run by the mob, because the mob ran all the unions, right? And so they, rather than trying to wrestle the ports, control the ports back from the mob, they just went, if you guys we'll let you kind of do your thing. And that's kind of what Operation Underworld was all about. And so what they did during World War II is they literally gave control over the entire eastern seaboard. I mean, I'm being facetious, but they gave control over all the ports on the eastern seaboard to the goddamn drug smugglers, like to the mob, which their favorite thing is to smuggle things. Drugs, weapons, guns, kid, whatever, I don't know. And so before the CIA was even founded, the OSS, the intelligence agency during the wartime, was already partnering with organized crime. And the people that founded those intelligence agencies, like Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles, they were corporate lawyers. And that's, can I just keep going on this? Because this is like, let them cook. This is the thing that blew my mind, right? Is I was trying to research GameStop and shit. And then I started that is an official part of our government, these intelligence agencies, that when you really learn their history and read about their official history, let alone their history that sort of is still secret, it is very clear that they've been off the rails right from the start. And that's true inside of every, like, whether you're reading Legacy of Ashes and The Devil's Chessboard, very well researched official books about this shit, or if you're doing internet research. And the reason why you'd start an intelligence agency using a corporate lawyer instead of like a doctor or a military guy or something is because a corporate lawyer is already familiar with all of the big CEOs of all the big corporations, right? Allen Dulles worked at Sullivan and Cromwell as a lawyer, and so he was very familiar with IG Farben producing Zyklon B for the Nazis. He was familiar with Standard Oil. He was familiar with shipping companies and fruit companies and all these companies all around the world, and he's got good connections with them all. And so you hire one guy, Allen Dulles, and you have just hired an entire network of multinational corporations, theoretically, to work on, is he was hiring the U.S. government in order to fund a corporate slush fund for corporations to utilize this power, this newly government bestowed power, to essentially wage violence that is sanctioned. Because, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Because all those corporations, the perfect example is Guatemala. United Fruit Company had bought up all this land in Guatemala and was growing bananas like crazy. And a lot of the land was just sitting vacant. And Jacobo Arbenz comes to power, and he's like,
in a world filled with nasal congestion,
bunch of this land. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy back the land. He didn't take it. He bought it back from the United Fruit Company, and he was going to distribute it for free to all the farmers that were destitute, which is like socialist kind of, but it's also pretty badass to use like your government money to buy all your farmers' land from this multinational corporation. But that pissed United Fruit off. And this is right as the CIA was getting founded, and United Fruit was a client of Sullivan and Cromwell, and Allen Dulles was the lawyer there, right? So United Fruit goes to Allen Dulles. His brother John Foster Dulles was the Secretary of State. Yeah, Secretary of State. So these two brothers that are both lawyers for Sullivan and Cromwell are the director. Well, technically Allen Dulles was not yet the director of CIA, but he was like the founder. He just had a beef with Truman and with the first couple leaderships of the president there. And so United Fruit goes to them and is like, hey, can we overthrow this piece of shit? Because he's fucking with our business, right? So this is like how corporations wanted this government-sanctioned power. And they, through those two brothers, lobbied the United States, propagandized the United States. They hired propaganda artists to propagandize them. And they painted him as a communist right at our doorstep. And then the CIA went in, and through a series of kind of somewhat botched attempts called PB Success and Operation Success and Operation PB Success, they overthrew the government of Guatemala, and they ousted him. They bombed Guatemala City, and they got rid of him, and they put in their own dictator that started 30 years of absolute devastation and like military rule and just death mark, like really dark shit that basically tore Guatemala apart on behalf of United Fruit. They did the same thing in Iran like 3 years later with Colonel Roosevelt, where it became this thing, these multinational corporations that are affiliated with this intelligence agency just kind of through friendships and through partnerships and through the network. They start to utilize Allen Dulles and the CIA in general on their behalf to do things for the corporate interest, because they are the power players in this world. They always have been the power players in this world. And they had been itching for quite some time to get that government-sanctioned ability to wage violence against anyone around the world. And we've been doing that ever since, using the intelligence agencies on behalf of the corporate blob, which is not always distinguishable from organized crime. And just going off and whacking people and overthrowing governments and starting coups, like right to this day, like Ukraine 2014.
And they can do it without being directly connected.
So yeah, the concept
Just like
of
the USA.
deniability. That's the whole point.
Yes.
Is you want to set it up in a series of shells, and the darker it is, the more you have to kind of separate it. So that when Jeffrey Epstein, no one knows who he worked for.
Right.
He worked for intelligence, and I was told to leave him alone.
Right.
And so you're left to speculate who he worked for, and that's why we are left to rely on sources like Wiki Web, who's done sort of a definitive dig, because they won't fucking tell us, because a bunch of them are black. Yeah. And it's not like it's literally a cabal of shadowy dudes around one table. It is just an alignment of many different interests, different families, different corporations, different bankers, or organized crime groups, all sort of playing games for power. And these guys have that much power, and those guys have that much power. Interests tend to align. Like the general vibe in the corporations will probably align with the vibe of the bankers, and their vibe will probably align a fair bit with some of this organized crime stuff. And we'll fund this terrorist organization, Mujahideen, until it's not convenient anymore. And then we'll actually use them as a patsy to go to war, because there's terrorists over there, god damn it. Right? And they've gotten quite good at kind of weaving those narratives through their operations, that they've either covered up or exposed what they wanted to in various ways to kind of steer our narrative around what we know. But when you actually read the history, it's like, holy shit. It's crazy how much.
Did you ever
What's going
read
on?
Smedley Butler's War is a Racket?
Yeah, dude.
So that was 33. So in 33, it was still going on like that, and he was waking up to it as he was leaving his military career.
Do you know about
pull
the
that
business
up,
plot?
John?
About what they tried to do with him?
No. Oh, yes, I do.
The
No,
Nazi-
yeah, he
the
wanted
Nazi
to take over the country.
No,
Yeah.
he saved the country from
Right,
it.
but not that he
Yeah, all
wanted
the
to. They
industrialists
wanted him to be a part
Yeah,
of it.
there's almost a Nazi coup in the 30s where we almost got taken over by our own military and became Nazis, because Prescott Bush and a bunch of his other buddies were on Team Nazi. That's because they were all funding the Nazis, and they wanted to they wanted us on that team.
And they tried to recruit Smedley Butler to be the lead of this.
Yep.
And take over the
I
country.
suspect, I'm always kind of forming my understanding research by research, but I
Here
suspect
it
that
is.
it was World War I where they realized how much power you can have if you're funding both sides of a war.
Look at this quote. I spent
Yeah.
33 years in active military service, and during that period, I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business,
Yup.
for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. Smedley Butler, 1935.
He was one of the most decorated Marines, or was he in the Army of all time? General?
Unfucking believable.
Yes, War is a Racket is a relatively short book that anyone can buy online,
Yeah.
and I highly recommend it to everyone. That paired with
But that's so wild that was 33.
oh yeah, and it's still going on to this day.
And the general public hasn't even had a whisper of this. Like the average normie, probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yep.
Like, when did this start making it into the zeitgeist? Obviously in films.
I think when Elon bought Twitter.
Right.
And it's still not making it into the mainstream zeitgeist, but there's, I mean, and you've played a big part in this too, this whole decentralized media space. As technology naturally walks forward, I think that we're living in this world where all these rich people, all these evil, controlling sickos of varying degrees, they come from a world where they could control everything. They could control the newspapers, they could buy out the press, they could pay for journalists.
Yes.
And that strategy walked itself into technology, and suddenly technology is just naturally walking forwards, and this just changes the game. Like, you can't use those old strategies when you have a phone and internet and social media, and we're watching the cognitive sort of breakdown of their old ways that they don't know how to adapt, and it's just scheme after scheme after scheme is crumbling.
Right.
And the secret is just free speech. That's all you need, is free speech and communication on the internet.
And Doge.
Yeah. I mean, Doge is how you actually go after it.
But you need someone who's pretty balls out.
Oh, yeah.
You need a guy like Elon that has...
I was glad that Elon said the stuff about assassination on the
Yeah.
podcast the other day, because that needs to be said, is that they are taking great risk. Even Pam and Cash, all of them, are taking great risk
Yes.
to do this. And it would not be the first time that someone's spouse had been whacked, or someone's kids had been threatened, or like they'd, created a scandal. Like, do you know about the scandal
Nobody
with
in it.
Chappaquiddick Bridge with
Chappaquiddick.
with
Chappaquiddick.
Ted Kennedy, it was,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is such a great illustration of how, like, it might not even be you that they go after. It might be just, there's all sorts of ways that if you do the wrong thing, allegedly, they might come after people around you.
Yeah.
And so people like Cash and Pam and RFK are taking on a lot of risk. And that's also why I think that my following is real conspiratorial, usually. Like, I'm moderate compared to most of my people. And there's a lot of suspicion of these guys right now. Like, they must already be controlled if they can even get in there. It's like, I don't know.
I don't know about that, because
I don't buy that.
I used to think, well, listen, I think there's definitely some manipulation of voting. Okay? I'll say that.
Oh, yeah, that's the
I
holy
say
grail. You can't say it, dude.
Yeah, I say it. I say it because
No?
I think, listen, at some level, for sure. Now, let's talk about the Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah.
Now, when you have 51 former intelligence agents claiming that this is Russian disinformation, and then you have the government getting it removed, Twitter complying, you can't even post a link for the fucking New York Post.
Yep.
The second oldest newspaper in the country, right? Legitimate newspaper.
When the FBI had the laptop already. Like,
Right. So that, in the time of an election, is election interference.
straight up.
So that is manipulation of voting.
Yeah, until
that
Trump
is.
came in,
Right.
that was the only election interference that I was willing to talk about,
Then you
because
have-
it was very provable,
Then
very
you
obvious.
have another obvious portal, which is California and New York won't even allow you to show your
Yeah.
ID when you vote.
Yep.
There's only one reason why you would do that, because you want people voting that shouldn't be voting, and you want it to count because you want to win.
Yep.
Right.
And more we're seeing that they are literally importing voters and paying them with government money.
Yes.
With like the huge amounts of money, when we have homeless veterans on the street.
FEMA
we have
funds.
Over 300,000 children are missing that have crossed our border that we have delivered to unknown sponsors.
Well, I think
Like,
the
it's
Trump
unreal.
administration very quickly, within the first couple weeks, found 90,000 of them. I don't know what the number is now.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, there was some. See if you can find that. The
I
Trump
would love
administration,
to
they
see that.
counted for they started looking.
Yeah, I know,
The
right?
first fucking, the first
It's a
administration is
novel
like, I
idea.
don't know where it is. The
Holy
Biden
shit, let's
administration
close
is like,
the border
what do we
and-
do? Well, we can't close the border. That's wrong.
Yeah.
The whole thing
They
is
literally locked up the guys that built the border wall, Steve Bannon and it was Steve Bannon and Dustin Stockton and I think one or two other people. When they wouldn't build it, these guys just went out and raised millions of dollars on their own, and they literally just started building border wall. You know about that?
I had heard something.
I didn't know about that
along
either. And then I now do a podcast every couple weeks with Dustin Stockton, who's a whole trip of guy. And he started telling me the story of like, what are you saying? I had no idea that they had literally just started building it from a private, like, citizen standpoint until they arrested them.
Did you know that also before the election, all the border materials were for sale?
Yep.
They sold the border materials.
Yep. They were just trying to get everything out as fast as they could. They were deleting files and just giving out aid money and announcing more and more foreign war aid to Ukraine and Israel and
They
everything.
said it was like throwing gold off the Titanic.
Crazy, dude. Yeah. Yeah. And I am really excited for everything that's going to come out. But I'm also like,
What were we just, before we go
Yeah,
any
what
further,
were we
what
Just a kid. I'm reading into the kids. It's it's definitely a political thing.
oh, the children are
Twisted.
actually missing, BBC. Go fuck yourself.
Well, this says that they had them, I guess, in records, and then when they sent court notices out, they just don't come to their court date, so they consider them missing.
Okay, that can make sense. But I think the Trump administration
I know that.
accounted for quite a few
Well,
of them.
that part I don't know. That's what they're saying.
You're not going to find them on BBC.
Well, I'm just.
Yeah.
All right. That's.
Yeah, so I work
So
Where would you like me
don't
to go?
don't put that Trump administration finds missing kids. Try that.
Yeah. Because I work with this guy named Ryan Mata who spent 3 years of his life going to the border with his own dollars and filming documentaries about this and interviewing the people that like rescue trafficked children and actually interviewing whistleblowers from within the Biden regime's trafficking scheme, like the people that were dropping kids off with sponsors.
Bottom
and stuff.
line, Sean fucked.
Sean Fuchs.
Listen to what it says there. The Trump administration has allegedly located between 75,000 and 80,000 of the 300,000 missing migrant children, according to Harris Faulkner of Fox News.
This is without a
That's-
that's a source.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
source,
just
trust me, bro.
just Google Harris. Right, I understand. But Google Harris Faulkner
I
of
would
Fox
love
News.
for that to happen.
Harris Faulkner,
I mean, I suspect that
Fox News.
every single, like, there's every incentive for Trump to find them and to do something about it. But I think the vast majority of them are dead, unfortunately.
So that's a Facebook link.
I mean,
And this is the thing, is that there are certain topics that are so disinformationalized and so sensationalized that when you start to research into them, you realize you're inside of this media madness that it's so hard to find the truth. And
Right.
COVID was one of those, and
Yeah.
J6 was one of those, the elections was one of those.
Yeah.
And when you find that, it becomes, for me, it sets a bell off. Is A, I'm in something I should learn about, but B, I have to be very careful. And I don't know, and you never know what you can trust in those spaces. And so that's where I change my switches for what to believe. And I kind of open up the bandwidth in terms of take it all in, but be very skeptical, because that's where you get wild conspiracy theories that are unproven, and trust me. And then you also get all kinds of propaganda trying to obfuscate the narrative.
Yeah, that's a
Right?
big factor that people need to be aware of, is purposeful misinformation
Oh,
that
yeah.
gets inserted into a narrative to make that narrative ridiculous.
Yep.
They've
And
done
there's
that.
whole conspiracy theories that
Yeah.
I think are like that. And Q might be one of them. I don't know.
could
I
be.
think Flat Earth is one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think Flat Earth was someone did that as a goof, and then they couldn't believe how much it took.
Yeah, right.
But if you can speak well, and you're articulate, and you have compelling things that you're saying, and there's no counter, there's no scientist going, stop.
Yeah.
We can show you in fucking 10 minutes that the Earth is round. Everything in the sky is round. The Earth is the only thing that's not round. You know, the weirdness of it is how much people want to believe that everything's bullshit.
Yeah.
And so you could trick a certain
I mean, I
number
get
of people.
why. Like, think
Oh, yeah.
about how much, like, right, so 10 years ago, Alex Jones was saying that the whole government's controlled by pedophiles. And he was a psychopath, or I guess more than 10 years ago now. And then Jeffrey Epstein got caught.
Dude, I talked to people about it back then.
Right?
And they thought it was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah,
'Cause
and
Alex
you were
Jones
a nut.
yeah, I'll tell you, there's a fucking island. They take them to that island. They get them fucked up
There's
on
more than
drugs.
one island,
They film
too.
it.
There's been a few islands.
Yeah, you think that's the only place
No,
they do
no,
that?
no. Yeah.
There's probably some super secret place in China that they all go to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're all over
Siberia.
Mexico. They're all over, like,
Jesus.
yeah, imagine what is in Mexico. The government of Mexico has been partnered with the cartels for at least 2 administrations, is what it looks like. And the cartels are just, like, running that whole game, that whole sort of northwestern, like, quarter of Mexico. I can only imagine what we'll find down there.
Really hilarious is the Blue Anon Twitter people,
Oh,
the
dude.
kooky ones who are like, yeah, you're going to go after the cartel. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. The greatest military force the world has ever known versus drug runners. Are
Which,
you
to
out of
be
your fucking
fair, the
mind?
cartels are highly militarized. They're
Sure.
extremely advanced, but
Sure.
yeah, they're not going to compete
They-
with us. No.
I had my friend Evan Hafer on here from Black Rifle Coffee, and he was talking about, like, do you understand the kind of, these are very capable people, no doubt. Do you understand the kind of ultra violence that they will experience if they let these, you know, fucking SEAL team guys go after the cartel people?
Because those
How
are proud
insane
Americans that have been itching to defend our nation. Like, they have been itching for the ability to actually do something meaningful.
And that's also the place where, you look, Afghanistan doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Oh, it was an opium operation.
Right. Oh, yeah, that too. We can get to that.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't make sense that we would send troops over there. It makes sense that we would send troops after the cartels. If you think about the amount of death that occurs in the United States because of fentanyl overdoses, where you have tainted drugs that are coming in across the border and killing people left at unprecedented levels.
Children, like taking kids from families. My whole generation was devastated by it. My whole generation.
Everyone today knows someone who died of an overdose. Everyone does. That was very uncommon when I was in high school.
And the problem is that it was not just illegal fentanyl and illegal heroin. The problem is that the Sackler family and the pharmaceutical industry was in on it, and so doctors were prescribing it to normal people. And it's devastating our whole population all at once. It's so tragic.
That Painkiller documentary on Netflix
Yeah,
is fucking or the docudrama series.
Yeah, and so the administration now in Mexico, she is like the protege of AMLO, who was the leader of that same party from before, and I think he served 2 terms. It's like, so it's been something like the last 6 to 8 years or something. Their official cartel policy is hugs, not bullets. And what they basically describe is we're causing more death by going after the cartel, and we'll just agree to not touch them. We'll just agree to leave them alone. And I'm kind of exaggerating again, but like that, hugs, not bullets is their official slogan for their policy about the cartels. So it makes sense for us to fucking do something. It's like, we'll do the bullets, you can keep your hugs. Thank you very much. Right?
I wonder what's going to happen with that. Because they did declare them a terrorist organization.
Yeah, I mean, I was worried. I kind of came out a little hot, and I posted something on Twitter that was like, no fucking drone strikes inside of the U.S. No, sir. No, you're not. Because the way that the sort of announcement was worded of like, we're declaring cartel members terrorist organizations, and we will be and drone strikes are like totally A-okay on that, is what someone was saying about it. And I was like, where is the line on allowing the targeting of cartel? Because once you start targeting terrorists, that's why 9/11 was so subversive, is it turned everyone into a possible enemy of the state that can be shipped off to Guantanamo, because terrorism is just this elusive concept.
Right.
And anyone can just become a terrorist if we just call them a terrorist. Propaganda.
There was people shipped off to Guantanamo who were definitely
100%.
And did time and got released.
Oh yeah.
You want to radicalize someone? Send them to Guantanamo Bay for a decade for something they didn't do.
Right. And the you brought up the Hunter Biden laptop and those 51 intelligence agents. I wanted to look into it. So I looked at the letter itself, and I actually read the letter. And on the letter at the bottom, they all signed it. And if you just start Googling the people that signed it, the very first 2 names were ex-directors of the CIA that lied to us about Guantanamo Bay and lied to us about surveilling American citizens and lied on the stand. And so they are professional liars that are from the intel agencies that are saying, oh, no, like Hunter Biden's all good, above board. It's like, why would we ever trust that? But that's how powerful spin is, when every media article parrots that, no, it wasn't made in the lab. There's no evidence it was made in the lab. That couldn't be true.
Yeah.
Everyone just believes it because we want to believe that that's how the world is.
We used to. Don't you think that over the last 4 years, COVID was probably the biggest wake-up call?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was my wake-up call. I was a leftist that didn't think about shit before COVID.
Me too.
No, you thought about shit.
I thought about shit, but I was pretty much a leftist.
Totally.
And then
100%.
I was like, oh, this is fake.
Yep. And to be
This whole
fair,
thing's fake.
I think we're kind of both still sort of leftists, what left should be.
Socially progressive.
We need, because politics is supposed to be a balance.
Right.
We need regulation of corporations. That's a leftist ideology.
Yes.
But we need individual liberty, and we're supposed to have a balance of the two.
Yes.
And I think, my theory is that it used to be easier to control the right because it was a big money party and you could go to war with them and you could lead us around by the right. But as technology came in, they realized it was way easier to spin narratives to the collectivists. And if you can get all the collectivists, the leftists, to go along with the narrative, that's way more effective than these individual liberty people with the guns.
Well, also, you're controlling all the universities if you have
Bingo.
the leftists. You have the narrative that you essentially program the culture as it then leaves the universities and enters into the workforce.
The most ignorant people ready to be programmed come in. I mean, that's always how communist revolutions have been programmed.
Well, we were talking about this with Jordan Peterson, where people were saying, what is the big deal? This is like 2015, 2016, when Jordan Peterson first, and when Brett Weinstein first started emerging. And before that, I was talking about these crazy things that were going on in universities, and people were like, why are you paying attention to these fringe things that kids are doing? I'm like, they're gonna graduate. These are the people. These aren't the people who 30 years ago were studying in school, trying to figure out what career to get into and job. No, they want to change the world with activism now. Everyone wants to be an activist in every job you take. Everything you take is supposed to enact social justice. That is supposed to be your, and then you're given this as like your social credit system when you're in the universities, and then you leave. Like, I still want to be the good person. I still want to be the person that everybody applauds. I will do the right thing. I will say the right things. And then you get DEI in the workforce. Like, oh great, it's all here now. We're all together.
And in a world with no meaning, where like life is meaningless for 99% of the population, you give them meaning, and they will cling to that.
You're on a good team now. You're on a team. You're on a team.
And I understand it, because I come from that. I come from one of the most liberal cities in this fucking country. But then I'm like, COVID's happening, and I was taking it really seriously. Like, my last Facebook post was like, all young people, we should lock down and take this really fucking seriously. And then all my roommates were like, hey, let's go down to Seattle and do the BLM protests. I'm like, whoa, like, you're a mask Nazi. You're like on me about my masking. And you're trying to go burn down Seattle in a group of like 100,000 people? What? And so they all went down to Seattle, and I'm back at home, and I mean, I still love them to death. Like, if they watch this, like, no shade to them. Like, I'm at home watching the live streams of the BLM protest, and I'm like, where did that pallet of bricks come from?
Right.
And that got me thinking.
Where'd that pallet of bricks come from? Over and over and over again. And there's all these explanations. Well, there's a construction site. Oh, yeah. Let me tell you something about construction sites. Bricks are fucking expensive. They don't leave bricks laying around like that because people would steal them and take them to their construction sites. That shit happens all the time. If you leave copper piping on a construction site overnight, people just steal that
downtown where there's meth heads everywhere.
Yes. Why you got a basket of fucking bricks?
No. And so then the thing is, I started asking a question. I asked one question in that leftist environment, and it's just like, don't ask questions. It's like, I'm fucking out of here.
Well, Chase Hughes was talking about that when he was talking about COVID. Like, what are the ways you can clearly see that something is psyop? First, you're not allowed to question anything.
100%. And questions are met with like, obey the herd, like and they demonize you, and they don't ever attack the arguments. They don't ever engage with the arguments.
No.
And that's what I love about the job that I've fallen into as a sort of like researcher, is that I have no problem with being wrong. My favorite moments in my career so far have been when someone's proved me wrong, and I've been like, oh shit, thanks bro, I didn't know that. I'm gonna research that and look it up, because some people can get trapped in their ego and need to stay on some hill and die there, but like, that's retarded. You don't need to do that. It's a progress for intelligence, for like learning. That's what the Academy of Ideas was built on, right? And so having this culture of censorship and of herd mentality, especially in the universities, is the most toxic thing to our national future you could ever incorporate.
Yeah, it's a perfect thing that a foreign company or a foreign government would do.
Yep.
Alright, we're here. We made it safe. Whole trip, we only had 2 knuckleheads telling me the back of the trailer's open. One of them was a trucker. That was kind of surprising. Anyway, if you watch this far, thanks for watching. Right? Maybe next time. Watch.